Now, the rest of the story.
Welcome back, and yes, this was filmed on April 18th. It actually took the 18th and the 19th to get this pile cleaned up. It was a 2-day job, but it is done. We didn't get the pile on top of the hill done, but I'm just gonna push it up into a pile and compost it, and we'll spread it either later in the year. And what we're doing is cleaning up a 2-year-old pile of bed pack, because last winter of 2019 into 2020. It was a late winter. I guess we really didn't start feeding on it until I think towards Christmas. And then we only really had like 3 or 4 weeks of actual frozen ground. And then it was just mud, clear through planting. So we never really had a decent window to get down and get this cleaned out. And this year has been a lot more enjoyable. We're going through and getting all this cleaned up because water does like to sit on the edges of where the bed pack was. And typically how I get around that, I am using just a material bucket. When you're going through and cleaning up bed packs that are put out on bare ground, what happens is that the ground is wet, it's soft, it's mucky, it's mud. As you're digging further and further into the bed pack. So what I do is, because it's cold enough out that it was kind of firming the ground up, plus the wind, plus the sun, little bit of sun that we were getting, the bed pack was spread out enough that I was actually trying to pick off of either side of the bed pack. With each load. So this side I'm trying to focus on the right side, and the next load I try to focus on the far side, and just kind of bounce back and forth and try to be wary of where you're driving, because you try not to go in your same tracks twice. This is a material bucket that I bought last year, a lot better than my dad's. Not picking fights, it's just it's designed better for digging and kind of pulling away at some of this stuff. My dad's bucket, the material bucket that you see, that huge one, was really originally marketed as it's a snow bucket. It's a big material bucket. It's just that we use it for everything. What makes this bucket shine is the fact that it has a new cutting edge on it, and on the sides, I don't know if you're going to see me, I thought I got closer to the camera. I do sometime throughout this video. You can see on the sides, the leading edges actually protrude out, and they're sharp. So they actually help you when you drop it down and you slide it across the ground. It helps you cut in or dig into what's there, and it allows you to get the full pan, the full width of the bucket underneath this pack. And as you're pulling back on it and you're raising and lowering, and you're basically wearing out your ankles, because this is a foot feet machine. So you got your loader is controlled with your feet, and your hands are controlling the directions of the skid steer. And what you do is you work the loader and the bucket up, down, back and forth, and it breaks away at this bed pack. Now my dad, I don't have any footage of it. I thought I took some with my phone. The next day I did not. He actually switched to the grapple bucket. Now the reason you're not seeing me use the grapple bucket on this is because it's primarily that mud clay mix. And what happens is that with the rock bucket, that Verney grapple bucket it's a brush bucket. It's not meant to really be used for manure. We use it for that because it still works pretty freaking awesome. The only problem is that when it's on dirt, those slots, the spaces between the teeth and everything, fill up. And if you're not careful, your whole bucket, the whole width of the bucket will be packed full, and then you either have to go through with a bar and clean them out, or what I've done before is actually take it back to the pressure washer and hose it all out. So there is a bit of a method to the madness as you're doing this. Once you get onto the concrete, which I didn't today, or at least in this video. The next day we obviously did. When you get on the concrete, when that mud, mucky stuff isn't an issue, the grapple bucket shines because you get that full width of the bucket underneath the pile. You clamp those jaws down on it, and then you literally rip away at it. I mean, there's no arguments. Once it's in the bucket and clamped down, that manure, the material, it's committed. It's coming with you whether it wants to or not. The only thing that we have to worry about, our biggest, weakest link, is actually the spreader. I've made that very clear. The spreader is pretty much on the same level as that case chisel plow. I mean, Grandpa had this spreader basically my whole life. I vaguely remember the spreader he had before this one. We bought it at his estate sale just because price-wise it made sense. It's got its demons. It has its problems. Everything from the web to the back end to the floor. The floor is actually not too bad right now because we replaced it with those sheets of steel, which makes the floor a heck of a lot sturdier. But I was actually slipping the clutch on the side of the spreader to the point where I had to take a bar and a hammer and some brute force and actually tighten it down a little bit. That's probably going to be the next thing we have to address with that. And then while I just left with the tractor, this is the cab view of the Bobcat as I'm going. The reason I did this, you can see with the material bucket, you can see the leading edges and the sides. This bucket also, the back plate where the skid steer attaches to the bucket, it's at a different angle than my dad's bucket. It's wider. It's a more aggressive bucket. Let's just get that out of the way. But the back plate on this is actually tilted ahead a little bit further. So when you have the skid steer, end plate, that quick plate, tilted all the way back, the bottom of the bucket, where the cutting edge is, that's actually tilted back farther than what my dad's bucket is, that the big material bucket of my dad's. So that is another thing that allows you to dig better at these piles. Now, what I'm doing is I'm actually putting the light, fresher corn fodder on the bottom of the spreader. Now, the reason I do that, because there is a method to actually loading the spreader. Maybe if it was a brand new spreader, it isn't a big deal, but with how old and, well, the amount of miles the spreader has on it, it really doesn't owe us anything. I mean, it's done a lot. What I'm doing is was putting the lighter, drier material on the bottom so it'll slide out better, so it isn't so hard on the web, on basically all the components, for sliding that manure out the back. And then what I'm doing here is, you saw I shook the spreader pretty good. This is where you're getting into the heavier dirt, mud, mixed stuff into the spreader, and you really got to be careful. You don't want to put too much dirt into the spreader. It's not meant to be a dirt hauler. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's hauled way too much. It's hauled tons and tons of dirt. I mean, granted, not willingly, but it's just part of the process when you're doing this. You just can't really help it. Going through and putting this heavy stuff on that fodder, it actually helps compress it down. And then when you are spreading it, because this is a single beater design, it actually helps it spread better in the field. Now, I don't have any footage of me hauling, largely because I was trying to move as quick as I could. Was it 13 minutes from the time that I loaded to the time? Okay, let's say it was 13 minutes from the time that I started the skid steer, loaded that first load of manure, went out, spread it, back in, and got back to the skid steer. It was just over 13 minutes, which isn't bad for what I'm doing and for where I'm at and where I'm hauling. So I was making a pretty good turnaround. I mean, 4 loads in an hour isn't too bad. Once I had Dad helping me, this is when I started hauling farther away. I wasn't exactly close to the buildings all day here, but basically all of our corn ground, which is about half of the front section of my place, is covered. So we did a good job. The 4020 76 was busy. It's still sitting on that drill. It's actually got to come off probably today. It's going to be the 2nd of May at the earliest before I could go down and seed down the valley, because I'm waiting for the residual from the chemicals to kind of wear off after they sprayed off that clover. That'll be time for another video. 4020 is a very reliable go-to workhorse. The 4020 is always down to do stuff. If you're looking for a tractor that it's just going to go to work, I mean, might have a couple oil leaks, but the 4020 is always willing to go to work. Hauled all this manure out. Didn't bother the tractor one bit. As a matter of fact, I think it was good for it. Got a nice work out of it. I mean, coming up out of this pasture, there's actually 2 hills. You gotta go out of the pasture, and then you gotta go up into the field. It actually worked the tractor pretty good. This stuff was really heavy. We were bahaing across the field about 5th gear wide open, and yeah, it worked the tractor. Not as hard as maybe we're putting it on the silage blower, but that used to be what this 4020 primarily did. It's an auger tractor, and it's was a blower tractor. It went on the forage blower for blowing silage up the silo. That's where it got the lion's share of its heavy duty work, but now it cultivates and hauls manure and mixes feed. I mean, we don't try to use it too much in the winter because A, salt, B, 76 is a lot nicer with front wheel drive and a cab, and I'm not really out to beat myself up trying to use the 4020 just to say that we can when in the winter, you know. But it's nice. You always have to have a tractor that, I mean, basically as long as you turn the key and it's ready to go. 76 fits in that category too, but the 76 needs a backup every once in a while, or maybe just a sidekick. So a lot of this stuff is outright dirt. It's composted. Like I said, it's 2 years old. The lower stuff, the camera's not picking it up as well as I really would intended it to. But some of that stuff that is clearly from 2 years ago, it's basically dirt coming out of the pack. It's composted. It's organic. It's dirt. I mean, it's about as close to dirt as it can really get, I guess is what I really should say. So I'm glad to have it out. Getting more cattle down here and getting manure hauled out. My place, actually, it's a toss-up between my place and my brother's place as far as places that really need the manure. I know my brother's place needs lime more than mine. My place, it needs the manure everywhere. I mean, the whole farm just needs to be covered about 6 or 7 times. And we're actually getting there. So there's that. I'm going to back the spreader back in from the first load you saw me load. And just like that, we're set to go. That's going to be the last manure spreading video, probably for this spring. Future videos, I'm actually thinking about maybe just sending Dad out to start working up some ground for soybeans. Thinking planting beans here by the end of the week. And once we get going, especially with the current weather forecast, it's cold-ish. I'd rather put beans in the ground in cooler conditions than corn. So if it takes us 4 to 5, 6 days to put beans in, switch the planter over and run into corn, that's going to be about perfect. We'll be done planting sometime around the 1st of May as long as the weather doesn't pause us. So with that, take care, take it easy, keep in touch. I'll talk to you guys later. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.